Then answered Baal, saying, only angels and mortals, these are the sum of all things. He thou hast looked upon was even as thou art, a one-time mortal on a far-off star world. He attained unto the Godhead to create a world unto himself, even as thou, who art an adept, canst create flowers and plants and serpents. Thus he came into the void regions of space and created the earth and her heavens, and they belong unto him, for they are his. And in like manner is every star world created and ruled by a God like unto thy God, who is Lord of all. Thothma said, oh, that all people knew these things. Oh, that I may remember them when I am returned to earth. Baal said, more than this thou shalt remember, for I will now take thee to the hells of the idolaters and of the Jehovians. Baal then took the soul of Thothma to the hells of Deus and showed him the horrors thereof, but he took him not to the regions of God in Oahspe. Now when Thothma had traveled in heaven for 30 days, Baal brought his spirit back to the chamber of death and showed him how to regain his corporal part, the which he did. So ain't nowhere in the world, unless you are truly being guided by somebody who is already in the S world or the spirit world, after that long, be able to attach back to your body and your body not have been worn down. I mentioned it yesterday that somebody in a long state like that, if they're not in the proper conditions, their body is going to deteriorate. Just think about what happens to people who are in comas for long periods of time, right? They done lost all this weight. They ain't moved around or nothing. But this was one of the beauties of the ascension chamber within the pyramid, that the body was held at a certain state that it didn't deteriorate no matter how long you were gone traveling away from it. Jen, Grand Rising, Jania, Shalom. Auntie, Belinda Brown, Shalom, Shalom. All right, page 378, verse 11. I'll read it again. Now when Thothma had traveled in heaven for 30 days, Baal brought his spirit back to the chamber of death and showed him how to regain his corporal part, the which he did. And then Baal signaled unto Egypt, and the latter spake to the priest on watch, saying, behold, Thothma hath returned. Go thou and fetch thy brother and deliver him into the holy chamber. And when they came, they unloosed the ceiling of stones and delivered the king into the holy chamber. And he was awake from his trance and remembered all he had seen in heaven when he related to the high priests who were with him. And both Baal and Egypt came in Sargus and talked in the holy chamber with Thothma and the priests. For one day the king remained in the holy chamber, that his spirit be reconciled to the flesh. And on the next day he and the priests came forth out of the temple and sealed the door thereof, and placed the king's guard in charge, that no man or woman might molest the place. Now Thothma had been in the death trance 40 days. 3 angels, Egypt, Baal, and Ashtaroth, came into the altar in the king's palace that night and showed themselves to the college students who had attained adept. Baal spake orally before them, directing his words to the king, saying, behold, I am the angel of God, thy Lord, whom thou hast beholden in heaven. I am the same who traveled in heaven with thee. What I speak, I say in the name of the Lord our God, whose servant I am. On the morrow shall thy high priest draw lots, and one of them shall enter the chamber of holies in the Osirian temple, and do even as thou hast. And after him, behold, another of the high priests shall do likewise, and so on until the four have had thy experience. And it came to pass that the 4 priests in turn cast themselves in death and visited Osiris's heavenly kingdom, and also many of the hells of Deus, being led in the spirit by Baal or Ashtaroth, Egypt being the guardian god of the temple. When they had thus accumulated the same knowledge of heaven and earth, the 5 of them were... What did you... Well, if you were sitting there, she wouldn't have got to it. Whose phone is this? Whose phone phone is that? Can we get that thing out of here? Verse 14. No, I read 14. I read 15. When they had thus accumulated the same knowledge of heaven and earth, the 5 of them were of one mind as to attaining. Hold on, y'all. I'm sorry. I had fruit in this. You know, you let it sit too long. Gnats start coming. I'm sorry. When they had thus accumulated the same knowledge of heaven and earth, the 5 of them were of one mind as to attain life everlasting in the corporal body. Osiris said, behold, I will bring many back who are already dead, and they shall call. Guys, hush. Behold, I will bring many back who are already dead, and they shall call unto their embalmed bodies and wake them up and inhabit them. Go ye then to the root of the matter and prepare my people, for I will come in person and inhabit the temple ye have built, and my heavenly kingdom shall descend even to the earth. Prepare ye the column of the stars. You know what this made me think about? Have y'all read the book Black Root Science? Right? I talked about it some months back. Right? Uncle Nathaniel. Shalom. Francis Peters. Love, power, and wisdom. Shalom, brother. In that book, it talks about, it's the person who wrote it is giving their experience, and they got wisdom from their ancestors or whatever on how things used to be back in the day, right? And how efficient everything used to be when people were more in charge of their senses, and they were kind of just doing some of these things which we would call supernatural now. Like ESP was like a normal thing. They were able to communicate with their minds. They were able to create vehicles from their solar plexus and travel. They knew how to Sargas. They didn't use Sargas in that book, but they knew how to make themselves invisible, right? But it goes through explaining on how you can so develop yourself in a way to pretty much awaken your spirit and begin doing those things. And it talk about the different levels of school that they go through in order to achieve certain things. And then at the end of everything, there's a huge graduation for the entire class, right? I'm just like, but it not like a small class, literally like the entire generation of people, right? But in that book, I forget which section it's in, because the one I have is broken up into, well, I think it's 2 anyway. There may be one that has everything, but the one I have is broken up, volume 1 and volume 2. And it even goes into the detail of the diet or what you should eat. And they were 100% plant-based. They didn't consume any kind of flesh or animal byproducts or anything, you know, which helps to achieve that state, the natural state where we should be, right? But it was talking about in there where that there were some in a pyramid, and I might be screwing this up a little bit because I read it last year. That there's a pyramid where there are bodies that have been preserved for a time of, this is what you want to call it. I don't think they use reincarnation, but right here when it says, Osiris said, behold, I will bring many back who are already dead, and they shall call unto their embalmed bodies and wake them up and inhabit them. What they was pretty much saying was that there are bodies that are preserved for such a time as this, and they're going to come back and inhabit them. Now, I'm not sure that, at this point, from what I understand, I'm not sure that is true on how the creator created things to be. I'm thinking even that is a teaching, or it comes from one of the kingdoms of one of these false gods, you know. But so that's why I said, with all that I'm learning going through here, some of the books that were in my lineup, I'm really rethinking, because some of the information that it has, maybe not all of it, it seems like it's coming from a place that is not from our creator. And I just don't want to, we trying to break away from all of that. So anything that smell like it came from the false God's kingdom, I don't want to touch it, right? Okay. So, but I'm glad the Oahspe just kind of opens your eye, not kind of, really opens your eyes to a lot of this stuff, right? Set apart living, yes, Christianity did a real disservice to us, right? They never even went into even some of the smallest points that the Oahspe brings out, that when you bring it out, it's like, duh, that's obvious. Why couldn't even we see that? Like, why did somebody have to even tell us this, right? Okay, I'll read verse 15 again, page 378. When they had thus accumulated the same knowledge of heaven and earth, the five of them were of one mind as to attaining life everlasting in the corporal body. Osiris said, behold, I will bring many back who are already dead, and they shall call unto their embalmed bodies, and wake them up and inhabit them. Go ye then to the root of the matter, and prepare my people, for I will come in person and inhabit the temple ye have built, and my heavenly kingdom shall descend even to the earth. Prepare ye the column of the stars. Thothma built a column to the east line of the slat, 7 lengths, and the height was 36 lengths. Of wood and stone built he it, with an opening from the bottom to the top, and the width of the opening was 6 lengths. And the walls thereof was a winding stairway, and there were windows looking out to the east and west and north and south, that the stars from every quarter might be observed. On the summit of the column were dwelling places for the seers and mathematicians, with places for the measuring instruments and lenses. When this was completed, Thothma built wood and stone. When this was completed, Thothma built of wood and stone an external wall across the slat of the temple, and within this wall were stairs also, and these led to the top of the pyramid. This wall